Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? Ready for the cruise to end? No. So this is my last talk. I don't know if there's another one later today. There might be. But I hope you guys are going to enjoy it. It's about cephalopods. So it's the big phylum of squids and octopus. So I'm going to talk a lot about it. I'm probably going to have quite a bit of time at the end, so we'll be able to chat if you guys saw something. Doesn't have to be related to that. Just if you saw something, you're like, hey, what is that? So we can just chat and answer questions. So you guys ready? Yes. So cephalopods. Cephalopods is a phylum. So phylum is a very big category of animals. They are the category of 4 different little types of animals. We have the squids and the octopus. How you can tell them apart. So the squid is going to have a much more elongated body. Little bit of physiology. You have the arms, which are the arms. You have 2 long tentacles, so those are the longer ones. Octopus don't have any. They have 8 arms. Squids are going to have 8 arms and 2 tentacles, so the longer one, and they'll be able to whip it out to catch food. You have the mental, which is like the head. For the octopus, it's much rounder. For the squids, it's long, so we have the mantle, and you have the 2 fins at the top of the mantle for the squid, and no fins for the octopus. The 2 other categories, we have cuttlefish and nautilus. So this is the cephalopods. You have squid, octopus, cuttlefish, and nautilus. The cuttlefish is going to look a lot like the squids, but the fins are going to be elongated all the way through the mantles. They're not just going to be at the top. So that's a good way to differentiate them. And the nautilus are going to have an external shell. So they're very beautiful. The nautilus are usually hunted very widely for their shells because it's so beautiful. So if you are ever to buy one, please don't. Buy a plastic one instead. But the natural one is one of the reasons why they're endangered. They're not doing so well because people keep hunting them for their shell. So their anatomy. We have the shell. So first off, the nautilus, the shell is going to look like this. Why it's so hunted. It's very beautiful when you cut it in two. The octopus is not going to have any shell. The squid is going to have a remnant of a shell. So it's called the pen. It's inside the mantle. It's along the body. So if you open a squid up, you're going to have the pen. So it's very hard. And the cuttlefish, thank you. The cuttlefish is going to have a cuttle bone. Same place, very small and inside of the body. So 3 out of 4 of them are going to have a shell or a remnant of a shell. So harm versus tentacles. The cuttlefish and the squids are going to have 2 tentacles to catch things. So usually the tentacles are going to be very long arms, sort of, and at the end there's going to be sort of like suckers, but they have teeth on it, so they'll be able to whip it out, catch food, bring it to their mouths. The nautilus and the octopus only have 8 arms. And you have the eyes. So the eyes usually are going to be much bigger, just to be able to see in different environments. For some of them, they're really, really deep in the water, so they'll be able to adapt to these different things. We'll see after the one that live like 200, 2,000 meters down. And for buoyancy, a good example is this shell. Do you guys see all the little tubes that connects to the chamber? That is a good way to deal with buoyancy. So if they want to float more, if they want to go down more in the column of the water, they have different adaptations to be able to either float or sink at will. So it's kind of like if you go diving, you have a vest that you control the air. They can do that with their shell or with the different little adaptations that they have. So for the species of Africa, we have the giant cuttlefish, which is very big. You have the common octopus, usually is the one that ends up on our plate. It's very common in dishes. You have the common cuttlefish, which is a bit smaller as well. And you can see the fins go all the way around the mentals. And you have the Atlantic bobtail squid, which is quite interesting. I'm going to talk about it a bit later. But small little squid, very cute, goes around. And you can see the little fin at the top of the mantle. Now, for symbiotic relationships, we remember symbiotic relationship is a relationship where the 2 organisms gain something out of that relationship, as opposed to parasites, where one gains and the other one loses. So symbiotic, we have cleaner shrimps. So cleaner shrimps that are going to go around on the octopus or the squid or the cephalopod and just clean the little things that have been bothering them. If there's been parasites or something, the shrimp gets a little bit of food and the cephalopod gets a good clean out of this. We have commensalism with jellyfish. As you can see on the picture, some of them will hide in the bell of the jellyfish, some of them will just hitchhike on it. So it's like an extra protection. The jellyfish stings, so predators stay away, and for them, they just get a ride. And it's not that common to see, but if you do see it, some species have a very interspecies specific relationship. They also share shelters. So for example, let's say a crab is going to dig a hole in the sand, or another fish is going to dig a little shelter. They are able to just share it with somebody else, and they can fit through practically anything. So in the middle of all of their arms, they have a beak. So that is their mouths. Usually in the movies, like a kraken, you see there's like rows of teeth. They don't have teeth. They have like a beak, kind of like a parrot beak, but very, very small, depending on the species. It's at the middle of all of the arms, and that's how they eat. So basically, they can fit through any holes that is bigger than their beak. So the beak they can't change, but everything else, the beak can be this big, the body this big, they'll be able to fit through. They'll just squeeze and glide through it and hide there. So it's very common that they will share shelters with other species, and you have a symbiotic relationship with a bioluminescent bacteria. So that is the bobtail squid that I talked about. So they'll have a bioluminescent bacteria living in their tissues. So the bacteria will emit a light for them. So it's very practical when they live down where there's no light or during the night. They'll be able to basically illuminate their path. But they don't necessarily do that own bioluminescence. That is usually done with an enzyme. It's called luciferase. Some of the cephalopods are able to have that enzyme, and they'll be bioluminescent themselves. But for this one, it's really a bacteria that lives in their tissues. Now, into the abyss. Very, very down in the water column. So down to 2,000 meters, which is about 6,500 feet. We do have a few cephalopods that live down there. Any idea which one it is? The giant squid, yes. So the giant squid is going to live really, really, really far down. It is one of the deepest species of the cephalopods. We have the colossal squid as well. I'm going to talk about them later. But there's a lot of different cephalopods that are going to live really, really far down. So that far down, into these conditions, you have an immense amount of pressure. Now, to give you an idea, if you go down to 2,000 meters, you won't be able, but if you do, it'll be like having 150 elephants on you. Don't know about you guys, but one's already enough for me. So 150 is a lot. The temperature is going to vary from about 2 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius. So it is very stable temperature because water at 4 degrees Celsius is heaviest because of the way that the molecules are formed. So at 4 degrees, it's going to sink, and it's going to stay there. So the temperature is quite stable down, and it is absolute and total darkness. So down, you can't see anything. So you have to find partners, you have to find food. Occasionally, you'll get the beautiful anglerfish, which if you've seen Nemo, you're probably scared of it. But these animals that live really, really far down, because there is no light, they make their own. So for those animals, we have, for example, the firefly squid, which is beautiful displays of light. If by chance they get to come up on the surface of the water and you see them at night, it's really beautiful. They look like glow sticks that are just gliding through. You also have the Dumbo octopus. So those are two of various species that are able to do that. But it's basically, like I said, it's a little activity into the inside of their cells with enzymes that are going to activate certain molecules into their own body, and they're going to illuminate their own skins. So they'll be able to use that to either communicate with other individuals for reproduction, for other purposes. They'll be able to attract prey like this, or scare away predators. So those are the three main reasons why they use bioluminescence. Now, there are a lot of challenges in observation. Anybody ever seen a cephalopod? Some of you, not many of you. That is usually because they don't want to be seen. So the biggest one, the one that we usually, or at least the one I want to see, they live too far down and they don't come up. It's not like, let's say, a dolphin. They don't have lungs. They can just stay down there forever. For the other ones, you won't see them unless they want you to see them. They're very good at camouflage, especially the octopus. So if you see them, they're either not doing very well or they want you to see them. So there's a lot of challenges in observation. Usually when we see them, it's because one has washed on shore and is dead. When that happens, it's the best way to study them. However, they decompose incredibly fast. Within one day, you'll just have a blob. So that's why usually you'll hear like, oh, a cephalopod of unknown species was found on this beach at this time. And people always say, well, why do you guys never know which one it is? Because within hours, it's already decomposing half of it. So it's very hard to identify one unless it has just washed up and just died. So the tissues undo themselves very easily. So in deep sea exploration, especially when the studies of the giant squid have started to really gain in numbers, there's more and more. So in deep sea exploration, there's way to go there through remotely operated vehicles. So you have like these little yellow cars. They go down, and it's kind of like the ones that you see on Mars, but for really, really deep down in the water. They have deep sea cameras that they'll descend down to take pictures. They have baited remote underwater vehicles, and they also have acoustic technologies. Those are usually more used for vocal animals, like the whales and other sort of things like that. So they'll descend an acoustic little sonar thing, and they'll just cap all of the noise. Those are usually harder because we make a lot of noise ourselves, so it's hard to distinguish the animals from our own noise. Now the adaptations, because they live literally everywhere on the planet. You can find them from Arctic to south to up in the column water to very down. So you can find them pretty much everywhere, kind of like the jellyfish. So one of the adaptations is the gelatinous body, because they're able to kind of squeeze through and go anywhere and hide. So that's a very good adaptation. The sizes and the musculature, you have the giant squid, which is enormous, and you have the little Dumbo octopus. So you have various size, various musculature from the various groups as well, from squid to octopus to etc. Bioluminescence, not all of them do it, but some of them do. The large eyes, you guys can see it in the upper photo. It's about this big, very big eyes. Those are for the giant squids to be able to see very far, because in this total darkness, you need to be able to see the little bit of bioluminescence that maybe another individual or prey would emit. They have the arms and the tentacles you see on the bottom pictures. So they have like little teeth around the suckers. One of them is the colossal squid, the other one is the giant squid. So they have different ways to really latch on to their prey with their tentacles and then bring it back to the mouth that is in between the arms. And you have the chromatophores. Now, chromatophores is how they change colors. So these are chromatophores. There's a little sack of pigments, and you have an example of the cuttlefish next to it. So this is basically the layers of a skin of an octopus. If I lose somebody, just do a little wave, I'll back up. So the first little layer is the papillae. Those are the little bumps. So with this layer, they'll be able to basically assess, let's say this is a rock and I'm an octopus, they'll be able to go on the rock and be, okay, so it's this structure, so I'll just make my skin like a rock. And then if they go on sand, they'll be, okay, so I'll make my skin like a sand texture. And then if they go on the smooth surface, okay, my skin is now a smooth. So the papillae is going to really take the form of the structure that they're trying to emit. And then you have the chromatophores underneath. So the chromatophores are little sacs of pigments. Usually you have black, red, and yellow. So those are controlled by muscles. So they're either going to stretch them out. Let's say, okay, I want a pattern of black stripes. Okay, so they're going to stretch out the black pigments, just confine into a little ball, the yellow pigments, so they'll be able to stretch out and basically limit the colors that they want. So the chromatophores are going to be there for the patterns, if it's polka dot, layers, stripes, whatever they need. Under that, you have the iridophores. So iridophores are going to be able to reflect the color that they want you to see. So the reason why you see colors, I am currently wearing, let's say, a white shirt, is because my white shirt is absorbing every single wavelength of color except for the white. So colors are wavelength. So I'm absorbing every single one, and the one that is being bounced back into your eyes is the white. That's why you see the white, because my shirt is not absorbing the white. So with the iridophores, they're able to absorb all of the wavelengths and throw back into your face the one that they want you to see. So be like, you know what, this rock is more brown, okay. I'm keeping all of the wavelength, I'm sending out the browns. Anybody, did I lose somebody? Okay, great. And then underneath that, you have the leucophores. Leucophores is the last layer. It is the one that is going to be able to emit these white hues. So basically, they can do like these hypnotic displays of like hues and lights. It looks like they're bioluminescence. It's just really bright white hues. So those are going to be able to basically emit the different little patterns. So all of them together, they'll be able to change as fast as they can think it. So the chromatophores are the fastest one. The iridophores, which is the one that changed to any colors, is the slowest one because it's manipulated with hormones. But the other one is muscle. So as fast as they can think it, they'll just change. That's why you can see a really, really fast change. Now, the thing that blows my mind, at least, is they can change into any single thing, any single colors. Most scientists seem to think that they are completely colorblind. So how on earth do they just know how to change colors? You guys ready for the answer? I don't know. So they thought that, well, most of them they think are colorblind. The cuttlefish are very most likely colorblind. Those they are quite certain. So to figure out how they're able to do it, they're like, okay, so we'll just like blindfold them and see if it's really with their eyes, if they have another way to maybe sense the color. Because how can you change into blue if you can't see blue? So it's a whole question. So they're like, okay, we're going to put like, you know these little goggles when you go like in a tanning salon? Kind of like that. But they have very squishy bodies. So they would just like be like, no, and go away from them and just take them off every time. And so the solution would be to remove the eyes of a yes. And scientists were like, you know what? We're good with the I don't know answer. So as long as somebody is not comfortable doing this, it's just going to be an I don't know answer. But yeah, this is mostly how they change colors. So they're very good at shape-shifting, and usually they can do it as fast as they think it. They can also do it, it's kind of like breathing for us. We can control our breathing, but they can also do it unconsciously, which again is a very, like, it's being studied quite widely, but we don't have that many answers as to how. So the predators, predators goes from everything to fish to invertebrates, depending on the size of the cephalopods. So there's a very wide range of predators. For the biggest one, so the colossal, and especially the giant squid, is going to be the sperm whale. It's the one that we know the most about, this little relationship of predator between the sperm whale and the giant squid. It's actually how we first discovered kind of squids. Sperm whale washed up on shore, and as scientists usually do, they perform a necropsy, so they opened it up. It's already dead, so why not, discover things out of it? And out of their intestine, they found loads and loads and loads of giant squid beaks. So the mouth that looks like a parrot beak. And they're quite big on giant squids. And so they found a lot of them. So that was the first idea of, okay, there's something down there. And the sperm whale does go up to 2,000 meters down into the water. So they live in the same environments. You have, of course, the orcas, because orcas eat everything. But these are some of the predators. You have loads of them, depending on the species, though, and depending on the place. The kraken. So the kraken is a mythical creature. Lots of people say that it's a mythical creature. In a lot of movies, it is usually, this is an octopus, but usually it's portrayed as a giant squid. Giant squids are not mythical creatures. They very much exist. We've seen them. We have them in usually alcohol-like structures. But yes, you won't be attacked by a kraken, I promise. And it certainly is not bigger than a boat like this. So we're all safe on this ocean. Now, there are these myths about giant squids attacking ships and dragging them down to the ocean. That is not true. So there are, and you're probably going to see videos where giant squids are going to come up to the ship and put their tentacles around. That happens. So giant squids live very, very far down in the water. Reason why they will come up is because they are filled with ammonia. Ammonia is a gas. It's a part of how they deal with buoyancy. So remember, buoyancy, if they want to sink or float, that is their strategy, as opposed to Nautilus with their shell. So that is their strategy. And when they are about to die, instead of sinking, they float. So they go back to the surface when they are hours away from dying. And as they go back to the surface, it's probably most likely the first time they see the surface. And so if there happens to be a boat, they're just going to latch onto it as like one last dying breath. And then the sailors are like, we're being attacked. And the squid is just like, oh, what year is it? And like dying. So not to worry. It is on its last breath. It's not going to kill you. But yes, that is usually where the attacking ship myths come from. But not all squids, not all cephalopods have ammonia. Not all of them do that. Usually when they die, they sink. It's really just the giant squid. It's a part of how they deal with buoyancy. So for the life cycle, they don't give live births for most of them. Usually they'll lay eggs, especially squids. So they'll lay these little bouquets of eggs, and they really don't live that long. You guys, if you know, it's about 14 meters, the length of a giant squid, which is very big. How long do you think they live for? You can scream it at me, it's okay. 10 years, okay. Anybody say better? 100. Oh, that's nice. It is maximum 5 years. So usually it's about 2 to 3 years. So they do it very fast. Usually is why also they're doing very well, the population. They can adapt quite fast. So they emerge from this little egg. They're like, okay, gotta eat. So they go around, they get bigger and bigger and bigger, reproduce, and then that's done. Okay, I'm gonna go die. And it's gonna be generation after generation. So they can adapt very fast to different changes. And I forgot where I was going with this. It'll come back to me. So you have the eggs, and you have a little example, cute little squid next to it. Now, how to reproduce, especially in these deep, deep sea environments, the dating scene down there is not good. There's not many of them, and in most cases, there's about 10 males for one female. So it's quite the battle, if you say. So in these deep sea environments, you have very rare encounters. So there's a specific species whose Latin name is escaping me right now, but they live very far down. And so when they see an individual that resembles a squid, they get very excited. And so they coat their tentacles with sperm, and they just punch it through the abdominal cavity, through the mental. They don't care if it's a fish, they don't care if it's a male, they don't care if it's a female, they don't care if it's a whole other species. They're like, someone! And they're like, okay, let's just hope it makes a baby. They do survive it, but it's the equivalent of if I were to punch you through your abdomen. So they have adaptations. If it's the same species, they will survive it. If it's a male, they'll just be like, oh, come on, dude. I'm not, like, you could have checked before, but it happens quite a lot. So if you think you've had a bad day, don't want to be down there. But for the other species, if it was, I don't know, like a jellyfish, they're most likely not going to survive it because they do it with quite the force. But that's one way to reproduce, especially because it's so rare that they see someone and they don't live for that long, so they're really quick. for other species that live a bit more up in the water column, some of them will cross-dress. So some of them are very big and strong, and like I said, there's about 10 males for one female. So it's this very big battle. So there's, let's say, going to be two very big squids. They're going to fight for the female, and then there's going to be another female that's going to come next to the female and be like, oh, wow, look at this fight. By the way, I'm a male. Do you want to mate real quick while they're doing this? And the female is usually very impressed by the way that they can act like a female and look like a female. So they're like, yeah, sure. And so usually, the one that crosses dress and acts as a female is going to be the father, while the two are just fighting for their lives. So that's quite common as well. But the female can also pick and choose. So say like, okay, half of my eggs, depending on the species, half of my eggs are going to be like this dude that was able to basically act as a female and go across all these males. And then maybe 2 or 3 to the one that like won the fight and barely lost his life. So they can decide which one it is. But that is also one of the theory as to how they became so smart so fast. If you take the smartest one that was able to basically prank all of the males and go around because it was so smart, this intelligence would be transferred down to the kids. So the intelligence. You have a lot of stories, if you guys are like me and you watch videos of octopus. They're very good at camouflage and mimicry, of course, not just hiding as a rock, but they can act as something else, act like a female, for example. They're very good at problem-solving skills. For example, if you put one in an aquarium, it's not going to stay in the aquarium unless you seal it very, very well and you know how to really keep it intact. They'll find a way out. I'm telling you, if you've ever been with an octopus, you turn around and they're already like on the ground, being like, hey, where are you going? Trying to follow you. So it's very hard to keep them into something. They're very, very good at basically solving, not mystery, but solving puzzles and getting out of things. They're very good at tool use as well. This little photo, there's a specific species of octopus that is going to find usually 2 big shells, and they're going to carry it with 2 of their arms. They're going to go around in the ocean floor, and then there's a threat. They just poop, hide in it, and you can stay next to it. It's the funniest thing. If you guys see that, stay next to it. Don't touch it, though. And then you'll stay next to it. They're in their shell, and then they'll, like, pop and open, just see, and the poop. And they can do that for a long time. And then when they see you're gone, they'll open, they'll carry the shell, and they'll go about their day until the next encounter. And they do this forever, and as long as I know, at least. So they'll carry those shells. If it's, I mean, there's a lot of plastic in the ocean, unfortunately. So let's say it's a peanut butter jar. They can just go in the peanut butter jar, twist the lid, hide in it, and then when they're ready, they untwist it, and they just go about. So they're very good at using tools, not just for this. They can use it for hunting as well. I don't have any good examples, though, but they use quite a lot of tools. They have quite complex hunting strategies. Some of them will hunt in packs. There's a few species, one that I'm going to talk about a bit later. Some of them are going to hunt very various ways. There's a nautilus that are going to take basically 2 nautilus. They're going to be face-to-face, and they're going to use hypnosis, I guess, with like the white hues and the change of colors. And it is very hypnotic. If you watch the video, you're going to be stuck there for like a minute. With this color pattern, they just change the colors, and the species is just there looking at it, and then they just eat it. So it's a way that they use. With communication, of course, they can do it with to communicate with each other while they're reproducing. This change of color that is hypnotic, they'll do it to communicate. And there's loads of different adaptations that I talked about. So we also have, oh yes, that's what I was talking about. Like this is, they didn't even try to put a lid on it, but even if you do, there's a good chance they'll find a way out. If not today, tomorrow. But yeah. So, reason why they are so intelligent, we talked about the encephalization quotient with the dolphins, the brain-to-body ratio. They have a very small brain if you look at it, but if you compare it to the brain size, to the body size, they have a very, very big brain compared to their body. They also have a very complex nervous system. I'm gonna switch to, Yeah, so if we take, let's say, the octopus, for example, the way that the nerves are made, especially in the arms, it is as if each arm has their own brains. So each arm can act individually from the other arm. So let's say I could do something with this arm, something with this arm, and they all have their own individual system of nerves that they can do different things with. So they also have a giant axon system that is that really applicates to the squids. So a giant axon, we have axon as well, but theirs is particularly big, which means that they can transfer potentials of energy. So let's say I think of something to wave, I have to think of it, and then it goes all the way to my arm, and I can wave. They can do it super fast because their axon is very big. So the impulse travels really, really fast. The chromatophores under control, of course, they think of it to change the chromatophores, to change the colors. They can do it without thinking, but it's quite extensive, nervously speaking, with the musculature as well. They have to control their muscles, all of that, and they can regenerate. So let's say they were to lose one arm. Of course, once they would lose the arm, first thing would be to basically seal the wound, and then over time, gradually, they'll be able to regrow it. It would take a while, but they would be able to regrow it for most species. And you have the example for the octopus. So the octopus is really like, think of it as one brain per arm in a way, so they're really able to manipulate it. They are arguably the smartest of all cephalopods, but that is for what we know so far. They are also incredibly agile. Like I said, the escaping techniques, they will escape through anything. You can try to twist the lid, you can try to close it, you can try to tape it. Maybe taping it, they wouldn't be able to get out, but most things they'll be able to get out. Problem solving, very easily, they can go solve quite a problem. Usually there's pictures where they solve like a Rubik's Cube. They can't do that. First off, they're colorblind. Second off, you have to understand the principle of a Rubik's Cube. So no, they can't do that. But tool use, like I said, learning and memory. If some of you have seen my octopus teacher or loads of different films about octopus, they're usually very shy and they don't want to see you, they want to hide. If you go day after day after day after day, usually they'll get used to you and they're like, okay, so this one doesn't hurt me. They're able to really differentiate, okay, you are you, you are you, you are you. Everybody is a different person, and they'll kind of become your friend. And if you come around from snorkeling, they'll get out of their hiding, they'll say hi. If it's somebody else, they'll stay hidden. So they're able to really learn, and also for some species, they can transfer that knowledge if they live in groups. So they can also transfer knowledge. So the threats, like I said, most populations, the squids as well, are actually doing pretty well. So that is due because there's no overfishing in the early, let's say the big fishing years where it was very commercial and they would unload like loads and loads of fish. They would usually take the bigger fish. Squids, octopus, they were very big in Asian culture, but I would say like American, European, we were the most damaged of the fishing practices. So everything that is cephalopods is actually doing pretty well population-wise, except for the nautilus. That is because of their shell. But overall, in numbers, they're doing quite well. The only thing that would be damageable to them is the ocean acidification, not for the octopus, but for the nautilus, squids, and cuttlefish, because they have a shell or a remnant of a shell. And with ocean acidification, the more acid the water becomes, the harder it is to build a shell. And even though, like, let's say a squid, it's not as useful as, let's say, nautilus, they still need to produce one. So with ocean acidification, it will become harder and harder to do that. And as well, they're very well adapted. That's mostly, like I said, because of their lifespan. They live very short lives. I said 2 to 3 years for the giant squid, maximum 5 years. Most squids and octopus are going to live maybe a few months, 9 months to a year. It's a very short life. So they're very easily able to, okay, I'm creating a new generation. They'll adapt fast. Once they adapt, they transfer those genes to the next one. As opposed to, let's say, us, who can live up to 100 years, it's a lot longer for us to adapt. Well, we're a bad example, but let's say like another animal, like a whale, for example, takes a lot longer for them to adapt to different things. Now the giant squid. So the giant squid is about 13 meters, which is 43 feet. That is much, much taller than me, for reference. They are very, very big. The chances of you seeing one alive, next to impossible. Dead, again, next to impossible. Unless it just died and washed up on shore, it is very rare that somebody will see it. For example, the first discovery was made in 1772. So that was the first description. It was basically they saw one washed up on shore, described it, but it was already kind of decomposing in a weird way. So it was bits and pieces of what it looks like. Nobody really knew what it was. It was really the first sighting. And then in the 19th century, it was in the sperm whale stomach contents. So they started to find these beaks, which kind of went along with the description from the first guy. He was a naturalist, Danish naturalist, if I'm not wrong. So they were like, okay, maybe this is the same species. We'll keep the beaks, see what it is. And then later on in 1873, that was the first photograph of one that had washed on the beach. It was actually in pretty good condition, so that gave us a good idea of, okay, this is really living somewhere in the ocean. And then in the 20th century, it was the first discovery of an intact specimen. So the first one that had just died, they had the whole thing, they had time to take it apart, see how it was basically organized. And then very recently, in 2004, was the first living specimen photo. So that was taken by a Japanese research team. They took a remotely operated vehicle, put it down very deep in the water, and they were able to see a giant squid and capture a picture, which I think is this one, but I'm not sure. But yeah, so that was the first picture we've ever seen of a live squid was 20 years ago, which is quite recent. We also have the colossal squid, which is not as big, but quite voluminous. So they're very wide, but they're about 13 meters, which is 39 feet. But they're quite similar to the giant squid, but you can see the mantle is shaped a bit different. So that, for example, would be something that was washing up on the beach. That is very recent, and you can already see like the one of the arms is kind of falling apart. So they don't really last very long. And you also don't have many human interaction. Like I said, they're quite shy, so they're not going to come on you. For the biggest one, they stay down in the water. There is one individual, the Humboldt squid. Do I have any fishermen in the... Some of you. Have you ever seen a Humboldt squid? You're very lucky. So that is usually not something you want to see. Humboldt squid are human size. So they're about 6 feet tall, about this wide, and they travel in packs. They can travel, you see the size of the pack. It can go from 100 to 200 individuals, and they are incredibly aggressive. I reassure you, you won't see them. Usually the people who encounter them are fishermen in the middle of the ocean, and it's not uncommon that they'll attack the fishermen because they're fishing the food that the Humboldt squid is trying to get. So it's kind of like, hey, you're trying to get what I'm trying to get. So it's a competition thing. I've heard stories of Humboldt squid killing people. I haven't had any confirmation, but I wouldn't put it past them, honestly. They're quite vicious, but again, it's not something you will encounter. They are in very open ocean, unless you're to jump off the ship, which don't do that. But if you are, maybe you would see one. But it's quite impressive to see. If you're not in competition with their foods, like if you're not trying to get the fish that they're trying to get, most likely they'll leave you alone. But they are known for their aggressivity. Now, the dangerous species is a very, very small one. It's about maybe this big. The blue ring octopus is most likely found in Australia. Very beautiful individual. One of the most toxic animal one of the most poisonous, animal in the world. So the poison is delivered through their beaks. We remember the beak is in between all of their arms. So they have to bite you to deliver the poison. And basically the difference between toxic and poisonous: toxic, you have to ingest it; poisonous, they have to bite you or sting you or inject something. So that is the difference. But they are one of the most poisonous animal on the planet. And it's not uncommon that you'll find them in your pockets. If you go swimming in Australia, in the Great Barrier Reef, if the individual is not stressed, it has enough food, they'll see it as like a game and an enrichment because they're so smart. So they'll like, ooh, let me crawl in there, see what is in there. And I've heard a story. You might have heard this because I know you're from Australia. It was a dad that came back from the ocean with his kids, and he found two octopus, one in each of their, in their pockets, and was just very thankful that it was in the kids' pockets, because there's a way that you can remove it without it biting you. But they are very, very dangerous, but mostly found in Australia. Now, there's quite a few very weird species out there. These are mostly down deep, deep ocean. So you have the blanket octopus, which is beautiful. This little kind of skin, they usually deployed it to scare away predators. So they'll have like their 8 arms, very normal, and then there's a predator, and they're like, washa! And the predator's like, oh my god, what is this? And it gives them time to escape. But usually made to scare predators away. You have the vampire squid, which looks scary, is not really harmful, but if you translate the Latin name word to word, it translates to vampire squids from hell, which doesn't inspire confidence in them, but they're not really aggressive. They kind of just glide through the water, do their own thing. You also have the flamboyant cuttlefish, very good at hiding. Usually they'll mimic the coral reef or the environment around. And if you look at the way that their skin is made, you probably wouldn't think it's a cuttlefish. At first time I saw them, I was like, oh, maybe this is a shrimp. And then you look closer and you're like, oh no, completely something else. You also have the big fin squid, which have these very, very long arms. If you see a video, some people will say, oh my god, they look so aggressive because their arms are going in every single direction. Because they are so big, they probably don't have that much control over their arms. It looks like maybe they were caught in a current, kind of like if you see a jellyfish with very long tentacles. If you do something like this, they'll get caught in the current and they'll like twist weird. It looked like this. So I don't think they're very aggressive, quite honestly. They live so far down that there's very, very few encounters. But yeah, the chances of you seeing one, other than in a photo, is next to 0. And to finish, alien-like. Maybe you've seen that. There was an interview right after scientists were done with mapping the entire genome of the octopus. Genome is the DNA. They mapped it out, and there was an interview with the scientist, and he was like, there's so many crazy stuff, crazy genes that we've never seen, crazy little molecule. It's like, it's an alien. And then the next day, the scientists were like, octopus are aliens. And the scientists were like, no, it's not what I said. They're not aliens. It's like they're aliens. They said it as an expression, it's like, this is the first time we've seen it. But they are very much from our planet, so they're not aliens. But since that interview, it's been going out everywhere. And in Hollywood as well, like the producers and people who have written scripts about alien movies, they have said that they were very strongly influenced by the morphology. And if you look at the eyes, just like this photo, they're very influenced by the way that octopus acts to create their own aliens. And so when we see in the movie, reminds us of this. So it's quite confusing, but they're not aliens. As far as we know, there's no alien DNA on this planet. But again, could be wrong. Science is very unpredictable. So, thank you. Have a nice trip home, and enjoy the Canary Islands, and enjoy your next cruise if you guys are staying on. But I hope there is much more to learn for you guys. So, hope you enjoyed it. Have a great time.